The hall was alive with cruel laughter. Hundreds of alien eyes glowed in the dim blue light, all fixed on the single human who stood on the great stage. His name was Daniel. His hands shook, but not from fear, no. It was from the weight of every mocking stare drilling into him. Before him rested the Xenotone. It was not just an instrument, it was alive. A strange fusion of crystal, metal, and something that pulsed like flesh. The aliens claimed only their kind could touch it without angering its spirit. For centuries, no human hand had ever dared. Daniel's fingers hovered above the strings. Trembling, a loud alien voice shouted from the crowd, "Look at his weak hands. Human fingers are not worthy." The crowd erupted in more laughter. They mocked him, clapped their clawed hands, hissed in delight. For them, this was entertainment. A foolish human about to be humiliated. But Daniel did not move away. He remembered the whispers he had heard in the markets, the stories told in secret. The Xenotone was said to reveal truth. It was said to sing the pain hidden inside the soul. Daniel had pain of his own. Pain he had carried all his life. Maybe that was why the instrument called to him. He let his fingertips brush the surface. Cold, then warm. Then something deeper, like the pulse of a heartbeat, pressing back against his skin. The hall went silent for a moment. Then the laughter returned. Pathetic. An alien jeered. He cannot even press a note. Daniel closed his eyes. Slowly, he pressed down on one string. A sound rippled through the air. Not music, no, not yet. It was something strange, haunting, almost broken. A vibration that seemed to come from inside the chest rather than the ears. Several aliens frowned. A few pressed their claws against their temples. Daniel opened his eyes. He felt it too, deep in his bones. One note. And the hall was already uneasy. Another alien shouted, desperate to keep the crowd entertained. "Play again, human. Make us laugh harder." Daniel's lips tightened. He pressed another string. This time the sound was sharper, a sudden blade of noise that cut through the hall. The mocking laughter froze, the alien smiles trembled. One tall figure staggered, clutching his chest. His face twisted as if old wounds had been torn open. What is this?" he gasped. Daniel stared at him. His fingers hovered over the strings again. He didn't understand the sound, but he could feel it guiding him. He pressed a third note. The hall groaned with the strange melody. The walls themselves seemed to hum with the sound. Alien voices rose, not in laughter now, but in fear. The crowd's blood-drenched eyes widened as if shadows of their pasts danced before them. Some covered their ears. Others whispered in panic. One alien female fell to her knees, shaking as though the sound forced her to relive something unbearable. Daniel's own heart pounded. What was he doing? He didn't know the music. He didn't know the rules of the Xenotone. But the instrument answered his fingers as though it had been waiting for him all along. The alien noble who had mocked him first pushed forward, fury on his face. "Stop, human, stop this at once." But Daniel's hand trembled over the strings again, and he struck another note. The noble froze mid-step. His eyes went wide. His lips parted, as if words had been torn out of his throat. A dark secret, whatever it was, clawed its way into the open. His body shook, and he collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. The crowd screamed. The laughter was gone now. Fear replaced it. Daniel stumbled back. His fingers ached, glowing faintly as if the Xenotone had burned them. But he knew this was not a mistake. This was power. The instrument had accepted him when it had rejected so many others. The whispers began immediately. How can a human play it? The Xenotone should not respond to him. His fingers, they bring out pain. Guards rushed toward the stage, their armored boots striking the stone floor. Daniel took a step back, but the Xenotone pulsed brighter, almost protectively. He could feel it urging him, daring him to play again, and deep down, Daniel wanted to. For the first time in his life, he was not the weak one. Not the one being laughed at. Every cruel voice had fallen silent. Every eye that mocked him now trembled with fear. His fingers hovered one more time over the strings. The guards stopped, as if they too feared what another note might bring. Daniel's breath shook. He could end it here, or he could play again, and uncover the hidden pain of everyone in this hall. The Xenotone pulsed like a heartbeat under his hand. One more note, and the truth of this place would be revealed. He pressed down. The hall shook with sound, and the crowd screamed. The laughter was gone forever. The aliens now stared at him with fear and rage. Daniel realized he had crossed a line. His fingers were no longer mocked, they were feared. But was he ready for what the Xenotone would reveal next? Question for audience. If you had the chance to touch something that could reveal everyone's darkest secrets, would you dare to play it? Asterisk, the hall did not breathe. The sound still lingered in the air, crawling through every corner like smoke. The Xenotone's echo clung to the bones of everyone present. Daniel stood frozen, his fingers trembling above the glowing strings. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't known what the instrument would do. But the fear in the alien's eyes told him one thing clearly: whatever he had played, it was not just music. It was truth. The alien noble lay on the floor, gasping as though his lungs were filled with fire. His companions tried to lift him, but he screamed when their hands touched him, as though some invisible wound had been reopened. Whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. The Xenotone answered him, "Impossible. No human has ever." Daniel's chest heaved. He should have stopped. He should have run, but something inside him urged him forward. The Xenotone pulsed warmly under his hand, its crystal veins glowing brighter, as though alive with hunger. "Play no more," shouted a voice from the throne. All eyes turned to the upper platform, where a powerful alien noblewoman rose. Her robe shimmered with silver threads, and her eyes glowed gold like twin suns. She was high-born, someone whose word carried weight. Across entire systems. Daniel met her gaze. He expected hatred. Instead, he saw fear. "Human," she said, her voice sharp, "the Xenotone does not belong to you. Stop, or you will pay in blood." The guards tensed, their weapons drawn. The crowd muttered nervously. But Daniel only heard the steady hum of the Xenotone beneath his hands, a hum that matched the rhythm of his heart. His lips curled in the faintest smile. For the first time in years, he was not the weak one. They feared him. He pressed another string. The note struck the hall like a thunderclap. Dozens of aliens flinched. Some stumbled back as if struck by invisible blows. The sound was not just heard, it was felt. It dug into their minds, dragging out what they buried deepest. A cloaked alien fell to her knees, hands over her face, sobbing uncontrollably. Another shouted in rage, clawing at the air as though fighting off phantoms. The laughter and mockery of earlier were long gone. Now the great hall was filled with cries, with fear, with shame. The noble woman on the throne staggered back a single step, her golden eyes flickering. For a heartbeat, Daniel saw her mask slip. Pain flickered across her face, raw and real. Breath caught. The melody, it wasn't random. Each note carried weight, like pulling a thread in someone's soul. And the Xenotone guided him, showing him where to press, what sound to draw. He struck again. Softer this time. A low, haunting tone spread through the chamber. It made the floor vibrate. It made the walls groan. And one by one, the aliens began to tremble, as if the sound forced them to remember something they had tried to forget. One young alien cried out, "Stop, please, stop. I can see her face again. I can see the one I left behind." Daniel froze. His heart raced. He hadn't meant to hurt anyone like this. But the Xenotone wanted more. It wanted every truth dragged into the light. The guards finally moved. They rushed forward, their armored boots pounding the stone floor. The noble woman shouted an order, her voice trembling with fury. "Seize him! Cut his hands if you must!" Daniel's eyes widened. He backed away. His hand slipped across several strings at once. The hall exploded with sound. It was no longer a single note. It was a chord, sharp, beautiful, and terrifying. The air vibrated so strongly that cracks appeared in the stone pillars. The aliens screamed as if their very souls had been ripped open. Daniel staggered back, clutching the Xenotone, his ears ringing. He felt the weight of the melody pressing on him too, dragging his own hidden pain to the surface. His father's voice, harsh and disappointed. The memory of being mocked, beaten, cast aside. All of it clawed its way up, forcing his chest tight. Tears burned his eyes. The Xenotone pulsed brighter, almost alive in his grip, demanding he keep going. The noblewoman's voice cracked across the chaos. "Stop him before he breaks us all." Daniel's fingers hovered again. His vision blurred with tears, his chest tight with pain, but the instrument wanted him to play. The melody had begun, and he was no longer sure if he could stop. The Xenotone sound filled the hall, tearing open the hearts of all who listened. Daniel could feel it taking hold of him too, dragging his soul into the storm. The question clawed at his mind. Was he playing the Xenotone, or was the Xenotone playing him? The hall was broken. Stone pillars had cracked from the last chord. The floor trembled as if the Xenotone's echo still pulsed through it. Dozens of aliens lay on the ground, some shaking, some weeping, some silent in shame. The great hall, once filled with cruel laughter, now sounded like a chamber of ghosts, and Daniel stood in the center, his fingers still glowing faintly. He was breathing hard. His body felt weak, but his mind was sharper than ever. He had seen their faces twist. He had heard their cries. Every note had dragged something out of them. Secrets, regrets, hidden scars. And the strangest part? He had felt it too. Each string he pressed had whispered to him, not in words, but in feelings. When he touched the low string, he tasted despair. When he pressed the high crystal note, he felt betrayal. When he brushed the middle strings, he felt longing. Deep, painful longing. The Xenotone wasn't just an instrument. It was a mirror that sang what it saw inside the soul. A weak alien voice rose from the crowd. He pulls out what we bury. He drags our shadows into the light. The noble woman on the throne looked pale, her golden eyes burning with both fury and fear. She slammed her claw against the armrest. "Enough! Guards, seize him now, before he destroys us all." But the guards did not move. They looked at Daniel with hesitation. Their glowing eyes darted between his hands and the Xenotone. They had seen what happened to those who stood too close. Daniel looked around slowly, his chest heaved. He was just one man, one human, but the power in his fingers made an entire hall tremble. And then he did something reckless. He strummed all the strings at once. The sound that followed was not music. It was a scream. Not his, not theirs, something older, something buried inside the Xenotone itself. Aliens collapsed to their knees. Their bodies shook violently. One cried out in a language Daniel didn't know, but the meaning was clear pain. Another clawed at her chest as if her heart had been torn open. And in Daniel's own mind, visions flooded in. He saw a battlefield covered in black smoke. He saw alien warriors standing over burning cities. He heard children crying, voices begging for mercy, then silenced. And with each vision came a truth. These were not his memories. These belonged to the aliens in this hall, their crimes, their sins, their buried pain. Daniel's eyes widened. His hand shook over the strings. He realized what the Xenotone was truly doing, that it wasn't just revealing secrets. It was playing their pain like a melody. The noble woman stood, her voice cracking. "Stop, you will rip the very soul from their bodies." But Daniel couldn't stop. His own body was caught in the current. His tears blurred his vision. His own pain mixed with theirs until he didn't know where one ended and the other began. He heard his father shouting at him. He saw himself as a boy standing alone, fists clenched while others laughed. The Xenotone forced him to bleed his heart out, just as it bled theirs. He gasped, almost falling forward. His hands burned, but he couldn't let go. The crowd shook with sobs and screams. The once mighty aliens were crumbling before him. Some begged for it to end, some confessed to crimes they had hidden for decades, and some simply collapsed into silence, broken dot, and then silence. The last chord faded into the air. Daniel's hands dropped, his breath ragged. The noblewoman's voice came low and trembling. He is dangerous. Not because he is strong, but because he makes us weak. The hall shuddered with fear. Aliens whispered, their voices full of dread. Is he cursed? Is he chosen? Or is he the Xenotone's master now? Daniel looked at his hands. His fingertips were raw, small lines of blood drawn where the glowing strings had cut him. His body was weak. But the eyes of every alien in the hall told him the truth. They no longer saw him as a joke. They saw him as a weapon. The Xenotone hummed faintly, alive in his arms, like it was waiting for the next song. Daniel knew the hall was no longer safe. But the real question burned inside him. Had he just uncovered their pain, or had he become trapped in it himself? The hall was still recovering from silence when a cold sound echoed above them. Tap, tap, tap. It was the sound of heels descending the crystal steps from the highest throne. Every alien turned their head, bowing low, even the ones still trembling from the Xenotone song. The queen had arrived. She did not need an announcement. Her very presence filled the chamber like a storm. Tall, elegant, her skin shimmered with faint golden light, and her crown glowed as though alive with fire. Her eyes, two molten orbs of gold, locked directly onto Daniel. He felt his chest tighten. It wasn't the same as the fear the others carried. Her gaze carried something different. A warning. The queen's voice flowed across the hall like liquid steel. Human, you dare. No one else spoke. No one dared breathe. Daniel's throat was dry. His hands trembled above the Xenotone, but not from weakness. The instrument itself thrummed against his palms, urging him, begging him to strike again. He swallowed hard. The queen walked closer. The air seemed to bend around her, heavy with authority. You think the Xenotone is a toy for your kind? Do you even know what you touch? Daniel's voice was hoarse but steady. I know enough. It reveals the truth. The crowd gasped. No one spoke to the queen like that. Her lips tightened. She stopped a few steps away from the stage. You believe you have uncovered secrets? You have only scratched the surface. The Xenotone was crafted to expose all things, hidden sins, betrayals, desires. It was meant to bind worlds to their knees. Her eyes narrowed. And now it answers. To a human? The last word dripped with venom. Daniel stared at her. He felt anger rising in his chest. He remembered their laughter, the cruelty, the way they had mocked his fingers like he was nothing. Yet when he touched their sacred instrument, they all broke apart. And now their queen stood, pretending she was untouchable. The Xenotone pulsed violently under his hands. Daniel's lips trembled. I wonder, he whispered, what sound you are hiding. The hall froze. Even the guards stiffened, their hands tightening on their weapons. The queen's face remained calm, but her golden eyes flickered for just a heartbeat. It was enough. Daniel saw it. She was afraid. The Xenotone strings glowed brighter, sensing her weakness. Do it, the crowd whispered. Play for her. No, it will destroy us all. Reveal her pain. The whispers turned into a storm. Daniel raised his trembling fingers. He touched a single glowing string. Very gently. The notes spilled out soft, haunting, fragile. It spread across the hall like a thin veil of sorrow. The queen stiffened. Her eyes widened. For the first time, her perfect mask cracked, her breath hitched. Her lips parted as if a memory forced itself into the open. Daniel pressed another string. This time the sound was sharper. A cry echoed not from her mouth, but from her soul. The crowd watched in disbelief as their queen trembled. Her hand gripping her chest. Images flashed in Daniel's mind, images that were not his own. A child locked away in a dark room. A voice shouting cruel words. A crown pressed onto a head. Far too young. Loneliness so heavy it cut deeper than blades. Daniel gasped. The queen's pain was immense, buried beneath centuries of power and pride. The hall erupted. Some aliens screamed. Others fell to their knees. Their queen, the untouchable, the eternal, was shaking before a human's melody. The queen finally screamed, her voice filled with rage and fear. Enough, she raised her hand. Energy crackled in her palm, raw and lethal. The guards surged forward at her command. But Daniel's hands were faster. He struck 3 strings at once. The sound that followed was unlike anything before. Not sorrow, not despair, something deeper. The Xenotone roared with her hidden agony. The walls shook, dust fell from the ceiling, and every alien in the hall collapsed, covering their ears, weeping, shivering. And the queen herself. She staggered back, her crown slipping slightly. Tears burned down her glowing face. Her golden eyes dimmed for the first time. Daniel froze, chest pounding. He had broken her mask. But he knew he had also crossed a line that could never be. Undone, the queen's trembling voice broke the silence. You will not leave this hall alive, and yet her hands still shook. Her crown tilted. Her soul had been exposed. Daniel stared at her, his fingers bleeding, the Xenotone glowing hotter. In his grip, he realized the truth. He had not just embarrassed a ruler. He had declared war on a throne. The chains were cold. Daniel's wrists burned where the iron cuffs dug into his skin. His fingers, once glowing with the Xenotone's power, now hung limp and bloodied. He sat in a dark stone cell, the sound of dripping water echoing around him. Hall, the queen, the music, it all felt like a nightmare now. But the sting of his raw fingertips told him it had been real. Above him, through the cracks of the cell, he could still hear muffled voices. The city was restless. Whispers spread faster than guards could silence them. The human broke the noble. The human made the queen tremble. Daniel leaned back against the damp wall, closing his eyes. His breath was shaky. He had not meant for things to go this far. He only wanted to prove he wasn't weak. He only wanted to silence their laughter. But the Xenotone had given him more than power. It had given him their pain, and forced him to carry it. His chest still ached from the visions. He could see the queen's memories whenever he closed his eyes. The loneliness, the cruelty, the crown forced onto her head. He almost pitied her, almost. Suddenly, the silence broke. A faint hum filled the air. Daniel's eyes snapped open. His heart pounded. The sound was impossible. It was the Xenotone's hum. But the instrument was gone, locked far away in the royal chamber. Wasn't it? The hum grew louder, vibrating through the chains on his wrists. His fingers twitched against the metal, burning with phantom light. He gasped, staring at his hands. Even without the Xenotone near, he could feel its pulse inside his veins. Was it still with him? The door creaked. 2 guards entered, their armor glinting in the dim torchlight. Behind them walked a hooded alien figure. She moved silently, her face hidden beneath shadows. The guard shoved Daniel to his knees. The hooded figure spoke softly, her voice low and urgent. You don't know what you have touched, human. The Xenotone doesn't serve hands. It serves hearts. And your heart bled enough pain for it to awaken. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Who are you? The figure lifted her hood slightly, revealing sharp, elegant features. She was not dressed like a noble. Her cloak was worn, her eyes tired, but fierce. "I am no friend of the Queen," she whispered. "Your music, it broke her mask. The people saw. Do you understand what you've done? You did more with 3 notes than we could with years of rebellion." Daniel's breath caught. "Rebellion?" The woman nodded. "They fear you now." "Daniel, but we see you as hope. The Xenotone has chosen you, and if you live, you could bring the throne down." The guards shifted uneasily, glancing at each other. Even they seemed shaken by her words. Daniel's heart raced. A part of him wanted to deny it. He wasn't chosen. He wasn't special. He was just a man who hated being mocked. Yet deep inside, he knew she was right. The Xenotone had bonded with him. It had burned itself into his soul, but before he could speak, a thunderous crash echoed outside the prison. Shouts filled the air. The guards rushed to the door, pulling their weapons. The hooded woman grabbed Daniel's chains. "We don't have time," she hissed. "If you want to live, if you want to see the Xenotone again, you must escape now." The metal cuffs around his wrists glowed faintly. Daniel's fingers twitched once more. The hum inside him grew louder, shaking the chains. He looked at the woman, then at his hands. His lips parted in shock. "I think I can break them." The stone walls trembled as the sound of battle erupted outside the prison. The guards screamed. The hooded woman's eyes widened as Daniel's chains began to vibrate on their own, glowing faintly with the same light as the Xenotone. His fingers were chained. Yet the music was already inside him. The prison was in chaos. Screams echoed. Down the corridors, blades clashed against metal, and smoke rolled through the cracks in the stone walls. Somewhere above, the city was burning. Daniel's wrists still wore the heavy chains, but they were glowing faintly now, vibrating with the same hum as the Xenotone. His bloodied fingers twitched against the cuffs. Each movement sent a strange pulse through the metal, as if the chains themselves were trembling in fear. The hooded woman leaned close, her voice sharp. "Focus. The Xenotone's power isn't bound to the strings, it's bound to you. Call it, pull it through your pain." Daniel shut his eyes. He thought of every laugh, every cruel word, every time he had been treated like dirt for being human. He thought of the Queen's golden eyes shaking when the music tore her apart. His chest tightened. The hum grew louder. His chains began to vibrate violently. With a sharp crack, the cuffs shattered, metal shards scattering across the floor. Daniel gasped, staring at his free hands. They glowed faintly in the dim torchlight, as though the Xenotone itself was flowing in his veins. Before he could speak, the prison door burst open. Rebel fighters stormed in, aliens in ragged armor, their weapons crude but burning with fury. Behind them, guards fell screaming, cut down in the smoke-filled corridors. The hooded woman pulled Daniel to his feet. "This is no accident. The people rose because they saw what you did in the hall. Your music lit the spark." Daniel staggered, struggling to breathe. I didn't mean to start a war." The woman's eyes hardened. "Revolutions never ask for permission." The rebels dragged him through the collapsing prison, the walls shaking with every blast outside. When they finally broke into the open air, Daniel froze. The city was alive with fire. Thousands crowded the streets, some fighting, some fleeing, some simply watching as the throne's banners burned. And above it all, the Queen's guards clashed. With the rebels, steel and light clashing in brutal waves, the hooded woman shoved Daniel toward the center of the square. "They came for you. The Xenotone is hidden in the Hall of Echoes, but you don't need to touch it anymore. Play them with your hands, and the people will follow." Daniel shook his head, panic rising in his chest. "I don't know how. I never knew the notes, I just felt them." The rebels formed a circle around him, raising their weapons as enemy guards pushed through the streets. The people shouted from rooftops, alleys, and windows. Their voices carried one name: the human, the Xenotone's master. Play, human, play! Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at his bleeding fingers, trembling in the smoke-filled air. Could he really summon the sound without the instrument? The first line of guards charged. Daniel raised his hands. He dragged his fingers across the air as though strings were stretched before him. For a moment, nothing happened. His chest sank until the world itself answered. A chord rang out. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The ground shivered. Windows shattered. The charging guards froze mid-step, their eyes wide in sudden horror. The sound ripped into them, forcing their sins and hidden grief to the surface. Some screamed. Some dropped their weapons and wept. The crowd roared. The rebels surged forward with renewed fury. The sound of revolt rose, and for the first time in centuries, the throne's guards fell back in fear. Daniel gasped, his body shaking. The music wasn't just in him now, it was him. Every breath, every heartbeat played the strings of the world itself. The hooded woman's voice reached in through the storm. Do you see it now? You're not just a player. You're the symphony. You can bring down empires. But before Daniel could answer, a voice thundered across the burning city. A voice louder than steel, louder than fire, louder than the screams. Of war. It was the Queen. She stood on the high balcony of the palace, her golden crown blazing in the smoke. Her eyes burned like suns as her voice cracked the night. Enough! If the human wishes to play, then he will play for me. Let him try to touch the throne itself. The crowd froze. The rebels' cheers died into silence. All eyes turned to Daniel. The Queen was calling him out, challenging him to play against her, against the seat of power itself. Daniel's heart thundered. His fingers burned. The symphony was only beginning. The Queen raised her hands, and golden strings of light spread across the palace like an enormous instrument. An entire city turned into her Xenotone. The air vibrated with deadly sound. Daniel stood trembling, staring at her challenge. If he struck one more note, it would not just be a battle. It would be a war of music. The city itself had become an instrument. From the Queen's balcony, golden strings stretched across towers, bridges, and spires, humming with terrible energy. The entire capital vibrated like a living Xenotone, tuned to her command. Every flick of her hand made the streets shiver. Every movement sent shockwaves of sound through the air. The rebels who had cheered moments ago now fell silent, many collapsing under the crushing weight of her melody. Their hearts pounded, their minds filled with nightmares of their own hidden guilt. Even the bravest dropped their weapons. And in the center of it all stood Daniel. His hands glowed faintly, bleeding, trembling, but alive. He could feel the Queen's song pressing down on him, trying to break him. It wasn't just music. It was dominance, centuries of power carved into sound. The hooded woman beside him screamed over the chaos. If she finishes her chord, she'll break every soul in the city. Daniel, you must answer her. Daniel staggered, his knees buckling. He could barely breathe. The Queen's golden voice thundered across the sky. Kneel, human. Your song ends with me. For a heartbeat, Daniel almost gave in. He was just one man, chained yesterday, mocked a week ago. What chance did he have against an empire's queen wielding the city itself as her instrument? Then, he remembered. He remembered the first laugh that cut him as a boy. He remembered the first bruise he carried for being weak. He remembered the hall of jeers, the nobles mocking his fingers. And he remembered how their laughter turned to silence the moment he touched the Xenotone. His pain had always been his prison. But now, it was his weapon. Daniel lifted his hands. He dragged his fingers through the air. Invisible strings hummed, pulled not from the city, but from inside his chest. His heartbeat became the drum. His breath became the wind. His sorrow became the strings. The Queen's golden chords crashed down like thunder. Daniel struck back. With a trembling note, pure, raw, human, the collision shattered the night. The sound was unbearable light and shadow clashing, golden and crimson melodies twisting in the air. Towers cracked, windows burst. The ground shook as though the planet itself could not withstand their duel. The Queen screamed, her voice entwined with rage and fear. "You cannot match me. I am the crown. I am the eternal song." Daniel's body burned. His blood dripped onto the ground. He felt his life slipping with every note. But his voice was steady when he whispered, "No. You're just another lie waiting to be played." He pressed all his fingers outward 5, bleeding strings of light tearing through the sky. The final note was born. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was simple. One human heart poured into sound. And that single note ripped through the Queen's golden symphony like glass shattering. The rebels gasped. The city fell silent. The golden strings broke, snapping one by one, until the palace itself groaned under the collapse of its own false melody. The Queen staggered, her crown slipping from her head, her golden eyes dim with terror. She whispered, trembling, "No, impossible. A human cannot." The last string snapped. Her crown cracked against the stone floor, rolling away into the silence. Daniel fell to his knees, his body drained, his hands trembling. The Xenotone's hum faded. Inside him, leaving only the echo of his own heartbeat, the city was quiet. Too quiet. Then slowly the people began to rise. Rebels and civilians alike looked at him, not with laughter, not with pity, but with awe. The hooded woman whispered, her eyes wide with tears, "You didn't just play them, Daniel. You freed them." Daniel looked at his bloodied fingers. He tried to smile, but his chest felt heavy. He wondered if he had given too much, if the final note had cost him more than he could pay. And then, from the ruined balcony, a shadow moved. The Queen, broken, bleeding, lifted her head. Her voice was low, trembling with fury and madness. "This isn't the end. The true Xenotone has yet to be played." Daniel froze. His heart skipped. The true Xenotone? Had he only touched a fragment all along? The story ended with the people kneeling, the Queen broken, but a greater truth hidden in her last words.